Mm.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this chat or conversation. Today, I have invited Gavin Fry. Hello, Gavin.
It's a pleasure to be with you again, Cecilia, truly.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Gavin. It was, I think, a month ago we were recording together, and it was a nice flow, and I had a beautiful feeling in my body and room. So it's nice to invite you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Gavin, you all come from Seattle, and you are a spiritual leader and coach.
Yes, I've come to coin what I do, is I'm a spiritual therapist and a leadership mentor to entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of being me, supporting others for 40 years. And it's something that's always been deeply nourishing, no matter who I'm with or what we deal with. It's just a pleasure to connect with people deeply and honor them and welcome them out in the directions they want to go.
So then I met you, and I feel like that you pointed me in that direction, and I just love it. So the topic today is who we are authentically.
And the other thing you mentioned is it's fascinating how who we are in the deeper ways, in the sweetness or the deeper folds of our heart, flourishes in the moment. It's almost like, the way I look at it, it's like an ostrich, not an ostrich. What's the one with the fan of plumes, the bird? Do you know that bird that it just has anyway, we shine in the present moment. That's where we have access to who we are, the authentic self or the soul. It just loves to play, and it loves to be met, and it loves to radiate and it needs to feel safe, and it needs to feel treasured. So I want to tell you, you have treasured me from our first contact. You are doing it now. Your warmth, your shine in your eyes, your enjoyment of the work that you're doing. It's like you have a childlike, youthful, alive spirit. And I can feel your intentional enthusiasm for life that's not efforting, it's just being.
But I feel like, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like something magical happens when I'm talking to you. It's like all the thinking about history and what I'm going to do next, it's just not here, and I can just be curious about what you're going to say now.
Wow. I'm very grateful that takes place with you. I know what it's like when I am exchanging with someone who I don't know, there's like a river that opens up and just starts flowing, and it's not a thinking. It's almost like tasting life and describing what it's like, as we go. And it's always brand new. And I can feel that happening for you when we talk.
And I do go out in life and get caught up in my thinking.
Yeah.
And then I have these moments more and more now that I can just come back. And that's so nice to know nowadays, that we got this possibility to I call it come home, to come home to the more silent place in me that doesn't compete me to others, or I don't need to believe in all the stories I make up.
Yeah. I really hear you. I think it's fascinating to me that as we grow up, most of us in our education and in our lives and in our family, there wasn't an orientation that there's a deeper part of us, whether it's the authentic self or the soul or the divine, no matter what you call it. There wasn't like imagine if a teacher in third grade had said, you have something treasurable inside that's unique to you, and discovering that and sharing it will bring you gold in life. But they didn't say that. And one of the things that I find that's treasurable about my work with people is it serves often to activate their relationship with their deeper nature. And when they start to let that happen, one of the things that's really cool is it's self-reinforcing, because it's who they are. The feeling is like, wow, this is me. I can be me. I'd say, yes, you can be you. And they didn't know that. They didn't know that. And for a long time, I didn't know that until I was 25. And I started to have experiences of going, whoa, somebody in here is quite remarkable, curious and alive and loving and compassionate. Wow. I mean, that's like meeting the ocean and saying, where do you want to swim?
Yeah, we're talking about the present, and we're talking, I often talk about the feeling. You can feel when you can be with someone with a good, when you feel that the authentic feeling in someone, when it's true.
That's right. I think
when
so.
they are talking true to you.
Yeah.
And that can come from whoever human it is. You don't need a education for that.
No, but it's fascinating that it's unique to each person. It's similar in that it's real and you can feel it and it's true, but it's got its unique coloring with each person. And each time you meet a person, I do workshops as well as one-on-one mentoring. And in my workshops, I created a process called Your Sacred River. So the metaphor is, I ask them each person to identify the 10 or 15 most powerful experiences in their life. And these could be joy, but they also could be pain. It's the most powerful, the most potent that influenced you. So first you identify those, people start doing that. And then almost like rosary beads, or like each one starts to, it's like it carries an energy, a memory, something that touched you. And then when you start to look at 10 or 15 that you gather, you go, wow, what's similar about these 10 or 15? Am I with people? Am I alone? Am I with nature? Is there a progression? And you start to really look at almost like the DNA of your own life experience, your own incarnation. And you can start to see, it's like it's got jewels. And I would invite them to call that their sacred river. And we each have one, and it's unique. And then in the workshop, I would give them each 15 minutes to share their sacred river. And some would do it in dance, and some would do it in poetry, and some would share, and in many different ways. Some would create a book about their memories. But somehow by doing that, just by reflecting and connecting, you get a hold of the deeper terrain that lives inside and the way it feels. It's very healing, and it's very, it's like what you described, coming home, but you start to come home to your whole existence this lifetime. You go, whoa, that's been there this whole time. And it helps you get more rooted in that place. And similarly, I'm sorry, can I say one more thing?
No, you give it.
So I wrote my book, The Real You, Leading Your Life from Your Authentic Self. And what I was guided to do, Cecilia, was I alternated between sharing my own personal autobiography and then the teachings and the things that I learned from all of my experiences. So it goes back and forth. But that autobiography that's in the book, that's in italics, that's my sacred river. And writing the book and getting a hold of all that it's just life-changing. Aside from whoever buys it or not, it was life-changing to just let myself spill out in both telling my story, and sharing the wisdom that I had stumbled upon.
I had this deep experience for 3 years ago where I touched the true. No one can say to me that I mean, it becomes clear to me then that I had been living in a made-up story about being sick, mentally sick. And I came to a point where I saw for myself. And it doesn't matter if someone thinks that no, that can't be true. You will have this coming back again. This is just because I had this shift, and that's so transforming. And it's not like earlier when you went to the therapy or when you took the medicine or you had a quiet time for some month and then it come back.
Right.
This was so different.
And whenever you talk about it, it's very evident that it's like the light came on in your life and inside of you. And my experience, when that shift happens in a powerful way, we walk through a door and there's no going back. There's no going back. I don't know if you remember, but I had a brother who was an older brother who he went into a very dark path. I was 10 and he was 15, and he started a life of crime, and it included burglary and then kidnapping, and then he started doing gang work, and then he was the leader of a white supremacist gang in the California prisons, and he murdered a lot of Black people. So he was in a very dark, vengeful, hateful existence for 15 years. And he began to wonder inside, is there something more? It's like, there's got to be something more, while he's in prison in solitary confinement after another murder. And we'd go visit him and he's filled with tattoos and hatred and long hair. But one day, in answer to, he thinks, his prayer, he had a prison ministry volunteer come and visit him and talk to him. And while they were talking, my brother had a whole and complete religious conversion, where he had a relationship with Christ that was very real. He was able to drop away that whole old story like you're talking about, and his life just turned 180 degrees. And from then on, he worked in the church. He worked with youth. He was tender. He was wise because he'd been through a lot. He helped the youth. But in my book, I talk about how, he's like a powerful example of going from like the false or the adapted self and then turning and being turned towards the authentic self or the soul. And like you say, it was coming home. It's coming home. And that's available. My brother's circumstances are dramatic, but there's not much difference to me between his and yours and mine. We each find it in our own way if we're fortunate.
But it didn't meant for me that all my awful feelings swept away.
Yeah.
I still had all this everyone feelings.
You still had a lot of junk in there.
So I'm not scared like before when I get afraid, or if I feel that I have anxious feelings in my body.
Yes.
I don't need to get scared in that way like before, because I know that this is one of all the feelings I need to have. I have that.
Yeah.
Every human have that, and we're always going to have that.
Yes. Yes. I was reading something yesterday that was quite revealing to me, and it was talking about the nature of addiction. Why, as humans, do we enter into addictive patterns? And the bottom line teaching that was being offered is that we try to escape from the present. So when things are uncomfortable, when we're in pain, or we're lost and we're not sure what to do, it's tempting to numb or distract ourselves with alcohol, beer, shopping, sex. It doesn't matter. But what happens when we make that choice is we actually don't stay with the discomfort and just hold steady long enough for it to reveal itself to us and be released. And then we expand. So it's just a misunderstanding of pain. It's actually a doorway. I don't know if you've heard that poem by Rumi called Guest House. Have you ever read that?
I don't know if I read about Guest House, but I read a lot of Rumi.
Yeah. Well, he talks about any visitor that comes to your door, welcome it as a
Yeah,
sacred
yeah,
friend. Right.
I
So when
read
you,
that.
yeah, so you're right. I'm with you. That includes everything. If we're going to be open to who we are, we have to have an openness to whatever we're going through and whatever we're experiencing. And it's glorious to me to find out that when we do find pain, this is one of my more significant learnings. When we do find pain, rather than just completely being engulfed by it and identify with it, with the story, is while we're in touch with that, we can touch into who we are. That's like witnessing or aware of that. And who we are can actually offer consolation or compassion and healing energy. And it's almost like talking to a child inside and saying, I see that you're in pain. I know this is hard. I'm here. I'll be with you. And building that kind of a competency inside, which is a natural competency most of us don't know we have. So typically when we're in difficult waters in life, we just kind of get engulfed by it until somehow we find our way out, and then we find our way back home. But to bring the home to the place that's troubled, not to change it, just to be with it so it's not alone and it doesn't feel so ashamed. That's where I think the power of knowing the spirit and knowing who we are, to be brought to these places inside that have felt exiled. And boy, when you approach them with love, they are so, so ready to receive it. It's amazing to me. Mm.
It sounds so beautiful, Gavin. It's very, to have this kind, to tell you yourself that kind things.
Mm.
It's very, I love when you point to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
something I need to do more often also. But
Yeah.
I do know now that I have to stay with the awful feelings too, because when people say just get rid of it, just leave it, go on,
Mm.
I feel that that's not how I see it. I see like I'm in this now,
Yeah.
and I have to, for now I have to be in this and not stay in it, but I have to feel everything,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it will slowly moving on. So
Yes.
I don't see that I have something that I have to drop.
Right.
I
Right.
hear that a lot. People
Yeah.
say, just drop it.
Right.
What is the thing with the drop?
Well, I think it seems to me it's a mental theory of how to live that bypasses depth. And so to go deeply in life where the real gold and the fulfillment is and the heart opens, it requires being brave enough and fierce enough to learn to be with those feelings, whether it's anger or fear or depression. I remember reading a book by Thomas More called something self-care. I'm forgetting it now, but he had a chapter title, and the chapter title was The Gift of Depression. Now, when I saw that, even just the name, gift, what are you talking about, a gift? This is not a gift. Well, he makes it very clear in his writing. Oh, yes, it is. It's like when we go through a cycle of depression in life, that's not being out of balance. That's part of the cycle of life. And if we can kind of cultivate the experience and allow ourselves to have it, it's there to reveal things to us. I know in my book, I have a chapter called Suffering in Darkness as Divine Messengers. And I like you, some of my most powerful entryways into who I am have come in through the doorway of, extraordinary pain and darkness. And it is an art, I think, to learn how to be with that, and not judge it or try to run from it.
And it doesn't feel nice at all.
No,
it
no, it
feels
doesn't.
so awful and sad sometimes, but I really seen that with myself, that's for me, it's the way I need to go through.
Yeah.
And I can't see that life lives without any anxious feelings or sadness.
Yeah. No, I think it's a false goal. I remember because I opened up to who I was initially at age 25. I'm now 67. That's 42 years ago. But the first 10 years that I was on that open path of spirituality, I mistakenly had the impression that the goal was to always be in the light, always high. And if I wasn't, then something was wrong. And then it began to really make itself clear to me that that wasn't the way to play the game, that the goal was to be able to bring love and this light that I touched into whatever I'm experiencing, the whole range. And that made for a much richer living where I wasn't trying to oversteer. It was more of a surrender path. And the nice thing about also being in relationship with others, when you can just share everything, not a selected view. And so I like relationships, all my relationships. Soon after I'm building a relationship with someone, I say, I just want to tell you, I really treasure taking risks in relationship. So if you came to me and said, I want to share something, but I'm scared, inside I would go, oh boy, I'm so grateful they trust me. And then here they come. And some of it they're really struggling with. And in my receiving of it, and which I do with my work, but also with lovers in my life, they unburden themselves. They just unburden themselves right in front of me. It's like they just unfasten this shell and then it just drops away. But safety is really very important, and it's a rare thing to find in this world.
Beautiful.
I
don't know how about Eckhart Tolle, how it was, if he always was in the light, because when I hear about him and read about him, it here's like he was just being in the light all the time.
I don't remember the specifics of his story, but I think he was in some very dire straits and difficulties in his life and had gotten lost. And then he came around a corner, kind of like you did or I did. And then, he just opened up to grace and some very powerful realizations coming through and being able to see. I mean, my teacher was like that. He had an accident and he was in surgery. And that's when he was visited by the spirit, and the spirit said, we'd like to work with you. And then that started all of his work. That kind of homecoming. And I'm just curious, you mentioned about yours 3 years ago. I'm just curious, what were the circumstances? Were you meditating or were you working with someone? Were you in nature? I'm curious, what were the conditions that were ripe that something powerful just changed?
I was in a very hurtful place with myself, and I have given up. I was very depressed, and I had I couldn't take care of myself. I was living in a home for psychological. I had diagnosis and angels, and I have been drinking, and
Yeah.
it was very, very dark. I
Right.
couldn't be at home, and they were having a lot of therapy with me, and I get more and more tired. And then I came to a point that I can't, I will not be better here, and I can't stand this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. So I gave it up, and I was alone in the apartment, and it really hurt. At first I was very angry, and then it really hurt. And I read a letter, and it said that a doctor didn't want to help me because I was too sick.
Wow.
And it just, when I read that, I felt like something in me said, this is not true.
Wow. So there was a presence or a voice or a knowing that began relating to your reality and questioning whether all of it was valid.
Yeah. And it
Wow.
came so deeply. I was alone in the apartment. It came so deeply, like a
Wow.
like that. And it just opened up
Yeah.
deeply,
Wow. Wow.
where I saw that I had made up. It's like something in me told me, you have to wake up from this. You are not sick. You
wow.
think you are.
Wow. And it sounds like it surprised you, but you trusted it, and there was a certainty to that, what was being shared with you.
Yeah, but it was very transforming. I didn't know what had happened to me. It made a shift, but I didn't know how to navigate in all the new things that I saw.
Yeah.
So I came across the three principles understanding with Sydney Banks.
Yes.
And started to listen and went to a school learning more about it, and became a therapy coach. And then I began to see more about how thoughts creates the reality you live in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that we are not the story.
Yes. Well, that I know it's sometimes referred to as testimony, but I'm hearing you report and just share what happened where your life, it just turned on a dime. It just opened up. And yes, it's not like everything was solved and but you were standing in new ground, and it was solid ground. And it was a place that wasn't critical. It was a place that trusted you and could see you. And I say to myself, well, how can that happen? And it happens all the time in my work with people. All of a sudden, I'll say something because I'm very intuitive. I'll say some story or words, and the person said, I can't believe you said that, because my father, when I was 6, he said this, and then all of a sudden they start crying because the opening is starting to just come, and just like yours. And I'm sometimes it's referred to as a spiritual emergence. Like it just starts to come out of us like an earthquake. It's the ground starts to open up, and the world changes. And
yeah, it's like you have tried to open up your eyes and see things, but you can't.
right.
It's not clear for you. And I tried my best all the time to not be anxious and not feeling those feelings about myself. I tried to help myself all the time. I didn't want to see myself like a mental sick person, but I couldn't I couldn't see.
Yeah, I understand. You know, when I was writing my book about my work over the last 40 years, I had a sense it would be about the authentic self or the soul. What I didn't realize was something similar to what you're describing, is as I was writing the book, I realized that a very crucial part of living an authentic life is being willing to look at the falseness that you've made up, to look at the way you've adapted, and look at it not in a critical way, like to get rid of, but it's like, wow, in response to all of this trauma, like mine was in the teens, I made up a story and I was complicit. I was involved in buying into the story about something negative about me and that I'm unworthy and that I'm not safe. But to identify that adaptation almost starts to dismantle and dissolve it if you look at all that with love, with your eyes open. So it's amazing to me. 3 years ago this happened, but I mean, there were a lot of years prior to that where you were in a way caught in a false story that wasn't true, and kind of in a prison. And so it sounds like once you opened up, you've done more work to look back and go, wow, what was that I made up? I can see now. I bought into a paradigm of pharmaceuticals. That wasn't for me, but I tried it. And all these things that don't work. It's a powerful story, Cecilia. And that's why in every encounter I've ever had with you, the gratitude you have in your heart for that turn just shines out of you. You can't stop it.
No, I really want to guide or just point a little bit people to just look that we think a lot of ourselves that aren't true. Right. And I did that for so many years. And after that experience, it transformed me. So I know now truly that I'm not mental ill. I'm not broken, but I do got all these anxious thoughts and feelings like everyone, but I can go with it and it doesn't feel good. I can be very sad and very angry, but I don't see myself as a mental sick person anymore.
Yeah. Yes. I remember doing group therapy decades ago with a group around me. And in the group were two men. They were brothers. They were twins. So we're going around the circle, introducing ourselves to each other and telling a little bit of our story. So we come around to the first brother, and he is angry. He's upset. He's talks about feeling like a victim. And he just describes this childhood where his parents were so abusive. And so it was so traumatizing for him, which for him, that was true. So, I met him and, thanked him for sharing. And we come around to the second brother. A second brother looks over at the first brother and goes, wow, I was there for all of us and everything they did, but I knew that had nothing to do with me. So what that lends itself to is it's the misinterpretation. It's the stories we make up. That doesn't mean that we don't have traumatizing and that there's certainly abuse, but the critical ingredient in terms of being authentic and being fulfilled and awake in life is, well, what did we make of all of that? I know when my brother was murdering people, my sister was a heroin addict, I started making up stories that I wasn't safe. I wasn't worthy. I would be next. I really thought I'd be next. It's like, wow, what happens now? It's like it's a bad dream where I'm next and I'm being careful. And prior to all that, I was just fine. I was flourishing. So, but I think that's what the hero's journey is about. I think that's what happens to all of us. It's like a universal path on this planet, is that we have a chance we come in wide awake, innocent. We can't help but be authentic. We're radiant as a young baby. And then traumas, circumstances happen where we kind of misinterpret and we lose our way. And then the next step is we open up again to, oh, right, I see now, right, I forgot all about who I was. And then we start living from that place. To me, that's the hero's journey. And the as it proceeds, then often we just want to help people. We just want to serve. We just want to, be an overflow. And thankfully, there's just a lot of those people around. And I'm thankful to be one of them, as are you.
I think my behavior was mostly against myself. So
Right.
I never did anything unkind to others, but I hated myself so much. But I believed that it was a story that was so true for me. So I can see that when we make up these stories, it's so true. And if I can do that, I can also see that when people behave in a bad way to others, it's also a story that you believe in, and you can't see something else. You feel like, but this is true.
Yeah. I when you say that, I think about experiences I've had where I've been in the supermarket buying food and I'm in line. And over in the next line, there's a mother who is with a child that's maybe 5 years old, and she's angry. She's yelling at him. And it's so difficult to see. But much like what you're saying, I also see she's in pain. She's got a story and she's just fighting and raging in there. And I think when it comes to things like child abuse or, criminal justice, what's possible is to separate a person from other people if they will harm them. But once they're separated, let's say my brother went to prison, they didn't focus on rehabilitating him or helping him with his story or learn about who he was. It was all shame. It was all punishment, and it just fed the beast. And so, to say, look, you need assistance. I'm just so fortunate. What happened for me, Cecilia, is I was drawn after all of my painful teen years. The good news is it catapulted me into psychology because I had to find somewhere that was safe, that I could talk about what was going on. And in psychology in school, having a man that's willing to be open is a rare thing. Most of the students are women. And so I got a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree in counseling psychology. However, those programs did not provide a safe space or a context for doing my own healing work, my own awakening. It was all theory. And also, they'd never mentioned spirituality. It wasn't even included at all, or even the difference between spirituality and religion. So I finished with my master's degree. I've got my diploma. I'm not ready to help anybody, and I know it. I'm a wounded man. And I didn't know where to go. I felt lost. And of course, being human, I thought it's because something's wrong with me. So I was living in that. And a friend of mine invited me to a gathering of Kundalini yoga teachings. And I remember walking in the room. It's kind of like you when you said you were alone and you had this other presence come in. I walked into this room and some part of me went, whoa, these people are loving each other. I've never experienced this, but I know it. It's like, wow. And I felt safe. And then a few days later, I went to a party where other people who had been doing a lot of transformational work, they were talking to each other. And I remember being stunned, like, wow, they're looking in each other's eyes. They're listening to each other. And the love was tangible. And it was so powerful, it just brought me to my knees. I began weeping in front of the fireplace in a home in the Pacific Palisades, California. It's like I just buckled. And they said, well, there's a training next week. So there was a 5-day training, and it was called the Awakening Heart. And this was like 60 people with a very, very beautiful design, very loving, very safe. So on the second day, I stood up and I held a microphone, and I was sharing with the group about my teen years. And I just started crying. I mean, I just bawled for 10 or 15 minutes. I had never done anything like that. I didn't even know I was carrying all of that. And I felt, felt they were very loving. I felt embarrassed. How are people going to respond to me now? This is not how I know myself. So we went out on a break, and people came up and they just were so affirming to me. They talked about how brave I was and how sensitive I was and how glad they were that I was there. And I'm like, it's like a whole other story starts coming down the pike, it's like, wow. And then the next couple of days, I started to open up to this grandeur inside, this intuition and glorious imagination and experiences. It's like my whole life just went like this, just like this. And it was natural, but it is great to have an environment where that can be invited. Because you had to go down a very lonely path and find yourself in the darkest hour in your room. That's how it happened for you. But, it's wonderful to provide a relationship or a container in a seminar room for people to do that. And it's not about me standing up there leading the seminar, talking about all these principles. It's I've learned how to create experiences where people have a tendency to open wide, like I did.
Yeah, and that I see it also when I want to guide people or be there for people. I want to do it from a safe place where I can try to touch that part of you that needs to see for yourself from the inside, and not telling this is how it is, blah 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 blah, because it's something.
Blah 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 blah.
Yeah. No, I've been in so many therapy sessions with that, and I can say that you gotta come to that place where it touches you.
Yes. One of the things I'd like to pass along, because you mentioned earlier in our conversation that I was talking about reaching out from who we are inside to a place that's hurting or in trouble, and the capability to do that. And that opened up for you. It was like a whole other new place came forward that said, no, that's not true. So a lot of what I do in my work with others is facilitate a dialogue between different parts of themselves. So I have a chapter in my book called Multiplicities of Selves, Healing Our Inner Family. And so I'll be working with someone who's in pain like you were, and yet they have a sense there's something more. So I have them take 2 chairs, and in one chair is the pain that they're in, and it can be expressed, it can be shared. And then they get up and they go into the other chair, and the intent is for that other chair to be their authentic self or their heart that can actually respond to the one that just shared. And it sounds almost simplistic, it sounds silly, but I have to tell you, it's amazing. People move over to that chair because you're inviting them to speak from like who they are or their authentic self or the soul. And here it comes. Often it's just here it comes. And then these two start having a conversation. But because they opened up this place, and that work, I learned about it initially is called Voice Dialogue by Hal and Sidra Stone. But also Fritz Perls with Gestalt had the empty chair technique that was similar. And then now, recently, the last number of years, there's a whole orientation to therapy called internal family systems. It recognizes we've developed a whole system of selves inside and how they are with each other. And that to get in touch with that can open things up. So the reason I like the approach is it helps with unfastening being locked in and opening up to brand new. And it's when they do that, I'm not telling them the information. They're in discovery mode. It's organic, and it's never the same. And I tell them, you don't have to know how to do this. You just have to be willing. And it's often astonishing what happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and something came to me now. I was staying in a hospital. One of the times when I were at the hospital for a depression, I was in the bathroom and I was looking in the mirror, and then something looked back very deeply in my eyes, and I get so scared. And it was like someone was telling me to hello, hello, but I get so scared then. So I couldn't.
Wow.
But it was like something was going to liksom hello, hello. And I talked to my psychiatrist about it, and he said, "Oh, do you know? Can you see whose eyes it is? Is it someone of your parents or someone else? The eyes?" No, I don't know. I couldn't. And I didn't
Wow.
know what that was, but
Wow.
now I can see that my inside, my soul tried to get
Yes.
me present,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I get so scared then. So I
Yeah.
have,
That's such a powerful story. Like it was similar to you being in the room, but this was in the mirror and looking, where it was doing everything it could to speak to you and to reach to you and help you. But it was so foreign, it was scary. And sometimes when I'm doing dialogue with people, they go, well, does this mean I'm schizophrenic? I'm like two people. And I said, at least two. There's all kinds of places in there. And this is a natural process. And but wow, that's just so striking. And it sounds also like the person you were working with, the psychiatrist, he couldn't appreciate the spiritual dimension that was trying to reveal itself to you. He just didn't have a context to relate to it that way. Nothing.
no.
No. And usually in those
Most
kind of situations, they'll go, well, I think we need to up your medication.
hmm.
You know?
Most of
Yeah.
the people I have met, they don't go that deeply. They can't handle to
Right.
see, they can't handle to speak with the deeply feelings.
Right.
So when you tell them that you have this thinking, they oh, then you have to write some medicine,
Right.
something you need to it's always something you need to do, something have to be done, and
Right.
it's something outside doing it for you.
Right.
It's not
Right.
an inside job. And I saw that nothing outside of these things they tried to do was the help.
Right.
It
Right.
needed to go through me.
Yeah.
And it really hurt when I went through it.
Right.
And it still can do when I go through things.
Yeah.
But I think there are levels of deep. And
Yeah.
every time you switch to a new level, you it's like a storm inside.
Mhm.
And then
Yes.
you see something deeper.
Yes. I'd like to share, if I can, a story from my internal process over the last 3 months, 4 months. I had just published a book, my first book, in December. I did all of these videos. I'd done social media. I was stepping out, and then I was about ready to start doing online workshops. But I was aware I felt anxious. It's almost as if I felt unworthy again, like I had to prove myself again. It was like this unconscious pattern I have you've heard maybe in America, they call it the Protestant ethic. Like, what have you done for me lately? It's like who you are is what you do. So this place was feeling very anxious. So I established a dialogue with this place, like I'm telling you about. And this place revealed to me that when I first awoke spiritually, when I was 25, this place had made up, its understanding was that I needed to perform for God. I had to do all kinds of things in my life that were enough in terms of helping people or writing a book. And it was like a contract that I'd made up that I had with God, and that I was always behind. And I remember when I heard that story, inside of me, the parts that's listening to it went, well, that's just a bunch of poppycock. I mean, that's just made up. I mean, God's not like that. God's not expecting me to do anything. It was like,
I'm familiar with that feeling.
yeah. And it was like, oh my God. And in seeing how ludicrous it was, it started to just dissolve. And then the words came up inside of me, I have arrived. Now, it doesn't mean I won't do more work in my life to help people, but I don't need to do it to prove I've arrived. I can enjoy a lovely life. And somehow in that encounter, Cecilia, some pressures torquing inside that I've carried since I was 25 just started falling away. And I found myself enjoying my life. I could get up and I could breathe. It had actually been strangling me on one level. So I'm still planning to move forward because I want to, because it's joyful, but not because I'm not enough until I do. And that was a very powerful turning point in my life. That's part of my sacred river that was like, and this is 42 years after becoming awake spiritually. So it's amazing how subtle the unconscious is and how trapping it can be until we discover it.
So I have some years left.
Yeah.
Because I do have this anxious feeling, especially when I go out in social media.
Yeah.
When you are comparing you to others, and they do this and that, and they have a huge audience, but I still feel a passion for bringing this out, because it's so hopeful, not to feel beautiful feelings all the time, because that's not what I share, but to be who you are with everything, and to know that that's who we are, that everything is, it's not that we are broken because we feel awful feelings.
Right. So I don't know if it's worthwhile, but I'm just offering it as an invitation. But I understand what you're saying, that you have a passion and you are moving forward. And yet there is an anxious place inside that shows up. So if you were to set up 2 chairs, and this passion for sharing and what you know could have a dialogue with the part that's anxious, where the anxious would be given a voice. It could talk about what it's anxious, because its reality is it's still anxious. And then to be heard, and then the other might respond. It's not about fixing it. It's just about having empathy. And then the one that's actually feeling anxious can maybe even consider it could ask for support. It's like, wow, if we're going to go to a gathering and we're going to be with people, and if I'm feeling anxious, can I tell you that? And can you inside hold my hand while we're walking into the building, while we're feeling anxious in our body? Could you help me with that? And this other place would go, just like when you help other people. Of course I will. Of course I will. And so I remember there was a teacher named Brew Joy here in the United States. He died about 10 years ago. Powerful teacher. He was a medical doctor who opened up to transformation. And he did a lot of work with shadow, places inside that we're ashamed of and we reject. So he talked about being introduced one time to give a talk. So because he's been doing this work for a long time, and he's got all these awards and he's got these books. So the person is introducing him, saying, here comes someone who's going to talk to you, Brew Joy, and starts going through all of the accolades, all the things he's done. And inside of him, while he's sitting there, he's feeling like, oh shit, this is not going to go well. I can't measure up to that. And a little boy gets in touch. He called it Little Brew. And Little Brew is scared to death. Little Brew's looking over going, how do I get out of this? Can I say I'm sick and get out of this? And he's scared. And, so he's watching that inside and he's going, okay. So everybody claps and he comes up to the front of the talk and he decides to tell them exactly what was going on sitting in that chair, exactly the kind of feelings he had and the insecurity, some of the judgments he still has. And he just confessed it. And as he did, this stream of energy of just came through him like it usually does. But I just love it because he's found a way to include the younger parts of ourselves, or dark, or the feelings, in a context inside that was safe and inviting, that wasn't making them wrong.
I will try that. I see it like it's the voices, all the voices you got in your head telling you you are that, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and
my voice said to me, you can't sit here and do these recordings with, not with Gavin Fry. Oh no, he has been done that and that and that. But something in me says, no, that voice is not for you to listen to. You need to see how is it to talk with Gavin.
Yeah.
And I love to talk, and I don't feel like you see me, look down on me. I see it like we have a very nice conversation. So I don't feel those afraid feelings.
Yes.
When we talk.
Yeah.
But if I go with the thinking before and look, this is what Gavin have been done here, reading, written a book and blah blah blah, then maybe I start the thinking about me not can do these recordings and this chat conversations.
Right. May I make an additional suggestion? Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So inside, what you're describing is, here comes this anxiousness and its voice. And then another part of you that emerged in that room 3 years ago goes, no, that's not accurate. What I'm suggesting is that you actually, in addition to saying that's not accurate, that you extend your heart to that place and say things like, no, sweetheart, I understand you think that's true, but it's not. This is what's true. And I'm with you. So there's a welcoming, almost like you take a child who's afraid and you take them into your chest and your arms and you'd say, that's okay. It's okay to be afraid. It's safe here. So
I'm not used to be so kind.
I understand.
But I really want to, because it sounds so softly to me.
Yeah.
It feels like more safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I'm suggesting and I think presenting is, there's another level of intimacy with yourself of a healing nature that isn't critical. It's embracing, and you have a huge heart. So I'm just suggesting, when you say, well, I still have anxious feelings, I do too, but it's less and less. But when they do show up is when I have access. That's my opportunity to bring more healing in a very real way in the moment. It'd be like, well, I'm just struck by your story, standing in front of the mirror, so, but these younger parts of us that have just had so much pain and felt so lost, and we're ashamed of them. I remember the first time I went up and talked to my spiritual teacher. I was so moved by him. I participated in his seminars. I went to workshops for 6 months, but I was scared of him. I felt insecure. I felt like he wouldn't want to have anything to do with me. So we're in a training room and he's in the back doing some work. And I got my courage up and I walked over to him and I said, I just want to tell you how deeply my life has changed since meeting you. And I can't thank you enough. And then I said, and I'm aware I've been afraid of you. It's like I feel insecure. It took a lot of courage to come up and talk to you. And he looked me right in the eye, turned to me, looked me right in the eye. And then he held out his hands and he embraced me. And he said, that's okay. It's okay to be insecure. Insecurity just means you don't have enough information. And he said it with kindness and he was holding me. And it was valuable information. Insecurity just means you need more information. And I went, wow. But he made the insecurity, he didn't separate from it. He embraced it. And I'll never forget that, and I worked with him for 35 years, so he was.
So kind. And I think when people do that, we feel so much more holden.
Yeah. We feel held, we feel whole, we feel, So, so when I make those suggestions your way, it's just out of I don't know if any of them would prove valuable. All you have to do is just set up 2 chairs and just do it. See what happens. Just run an experiment. And
I will, Gavin, I will.
Yes, and the best time to do it is when you're feeling insecure. When you're feeling or you're feeling anxious, that's the time. Say, okay, all right, we're gonna try that experiment that Gavin recommended and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I do got this moment, and I see that when you go in this direction, it happens things all the time. I have been in some retreats since this 3 years, and every time something in the room happens, when we sit there all together, it's like the energy moves in the room, and I can feel when others share about difficult things, I can feel that we can hold each other, and it opens up for more.
Right. That's right.
So I have loved to go away from to those retreats. I've been sitting a lot on both webinars and also retreats in a couple of days when you sit hours after hours together, both online and in life. And I just love to do that because you come very close, people.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing you describe, my words, is you saturate yourself in love.
Yeah.
Like the way you marinate something before you cook it. I heard a story once, Cecilia, that was very dear to me. When I was in kindergarten, the teacher one day rolled in an incubator, those little domed table where there were eggs, and it was warming the eggs for hatchings. They call it an incubator. And she said to us, these eggs will hatch in it's either 3 weeks or 6 weeks. I think it's 6. And little chickens are going to come out of there as chicks. And, we're kindergarten. We're going, really? Are you kidding me? I mean, if something comes out of the egg, how is it alive in the egg? How does it breathe? All these questions. So, we'd come in every day and go on our tippy toes and take a look. It's like, wow, what's happening? So then one day she goes, notice those little cracks on a couple of the eggs? They're trying to get out from the inside. And then lo and behold, they get out, they're messy, they're wet, and then they start chirping around and then they're alive, right? So I was always curious, because I'm very curious, what determines when they get out? Why did they get out? Why don't they just stay there forever? Or why don't they die? And I met a doctor who said they know the answer to that. The answer is when they're inside at a certain point in their gestation, a noxious gas, a poisonous gas is emitted inside the shell, and they have to get out. And that's when they get out. It's like, whoa. I mean, that's often like, I mean, look how far down the road you were in your own pain before that voice that tried to talk to you in the bathroom got through and broke through, and you let it. It's like, I mean, you just chipped your way out, out of the egg. It's just like, and you've been out ever since. It's very clear you're not going back. Yeah.
I'm not.
No. Mm.
And that's the whole difference between the transformation or to take a couple of months with some medicine or something.
Yeah, no question. It's a very different paradigm, and it's a paradigm that really, it doesn't see.
And people think
I know
that this is not true, but they think.
Yeah, right. I hear
can't do anything about, we can't do anything about when people thinking. It's just things moving on.
Yeah.
And this is something different.
Yeah.
When you really touch something deeply, when it's like when you don't want to live with that person anymore, or you need to move on from something you don't want to, you just know.
Right. It's like a deeper truth is trying to emerge from inside. It's trying to come out, and it's an undeniable thing. I remember when I realized that I was going to get a divorce after 25 years. I was just stunned. I thought I'd be with her forever. And I'm really wrestling with all of our problems, and we're in therapy, and I'm going at it, and I'm thinking, well, if I just try hard, I'll get there. And inside, way inside, what started to emerge was, have you ever considered letting go of this? I think that was scary to even consider that. It's like, no, I'm failing, and then I'll be a divorcee. But this voice was like yours. It was insistent. It said, I think it's time to let go. I think it's time, and it's not about making anybody wrong, but the deeper truth is you're no longer aligned with building your life with this person. And it was true. And it was scary to let in, and then scary to act on. But as soon as I gave voice to it, I felt so much better, because it was true. It was deeply true. And I can't ride roughly over that voice. So it's amazing how truth lives inside of us if we're willing to hear it.
Yeah, if we're willing to hear it, because it's in everyone, every human. And
right.
And you just know when you know.
Right. That's right.
True
That's
is
right.
true. It's not what you think it's true.
No,
It's true. You
right.
feel it deep.
That's very dear. It's true.
It's true.
Well, then I'm thinking about the people who might watch this or listen to this, right? And I would imagine everybody listening has their own stories when that truth has just come in and kind of turned their life around or turned it upside down. And maybe they're working with something now where there's a truth that can kind of be welcomed by our message, which is open, is open and trust. So you have a very deep, quiet, profound, lovely, powerful energy and heart. And often when we're talking like this, like now, and you just go into this quiet place, I mean, you just speak volumes because you're free in there and you're grateful in there. I can feel it. It's like, wow. So it's a pleasure to know you, Cecilia.
Thank you, Gavin. I put all these words back to you because I feel the same. And that's why I just want to have this very, very nice conversations.
Yeah.
Because this brings us and others to a safe place.
Yeah, with an invitation to what's next, and what's, in a way, life has so much beauty and so much fulfillment available. And we never were taught about how to be available to it or how to welcome it. We were taught how not to be. So it's kind of like it's education of removing things, letting go, and just standing there. And I love our sharing today and what we focused on. And I'm just trying to highlight that this is a natural process. This isn't a theory, it isn't a thought. It's like if you plant a garden and you take these little seeds, which is miraculous to me, and you set them into the ground, in the soil, with a little bit of fertilizer and a little bit of water and a little bit of sun, and then here they come up out of the ground with green, and then they grow up and they become a tree. You go, how does that happen? It's designed that way. And that's what I'm saying, is we're designed this way. I mean, we actually have to work hard to get in the way of our natural design. I mean, I can only imagine your life has become eminently easier since you've shifted 3 years ago, because you're in harmony with who you are and welcoming that and continuing to make discoveries. It's a glorious thing.
And I also can see the innocence when people make up a lot of stories, and maybe I just get quiet and move forward.
Yeah.
And let that be, because I know that this is something you need to go through by yourself.
Yeah.
So inside job, like they used to say.
Deep inside out.
Yeah.
And it is wonderful to have a sacred community of those that have a sincere intent to do just that. And if you're fortunate enough, like I was, to have facilitators and the designers, so then I followed that path. I did that. That's the work that I've done, is I've learned how to design a sacred container with a group of people that's organic, and discovery happens. And it's kind of like creating a space for chicks to hatch. And they hatch. They know how to hatch. The chicks, they know how to hatch. We know how to do this. It's natural. This is who we are. It's just, it's like, wow. It's like, I can fly. I was designed to fly. Yes, you were. You were. Very much so.
And Gavin, I put where people can find you in the bio.
Okay.
So if someone are curious to speak more to Gavin, just contact you, and also read your book.
Yeah, it's easy. I'll just say it so it's on the video or on the audio, but it's gavinfry.com, GAVINFRYE.com. And the book is available all around the world, but it's called The Real You, Leading Your Life from Your Authentic Self. And it's all the work I've done for 40 years, and it's got my life story interlaced. And it's a labor of love. And I always appreciate talking to you. And if you want to do another time when we share and we find out where we go, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye, Gavin. Thank you very much.
Okay.